This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. I'm guessing watching this, I think my preference would be, if I'm going to be choosing an amp to buy in 2025, I'm going to be looking at something which has real tubes. For me, as someone who uses modelling an awful lot, I'll buy an HX Stomp or an FM3 or, even a Quad Cortex versus, a digital modelling amp, which is kind of an expensive way to buy like one or two models. That's kind of how I feel about this. And then I plugged in a Boss Katana. So this is the Katana 3 head, which I did do a demo of. To me, I feel like what am I missing? Like, if you're wanting to go down the digital modelling in an amp format, the Katana is cost effective. If you pair it with a good speaker, which is, I think, more than half the battle with some of this stuff, then you actually get some, like, this was just using it as a clean pedal platform. I've gigged this type of thing. You get a pretty good response, and, it does take pedals pretty well. I was using a Dude and a Marshall Blues Breaker at the start of this. why would you need to spend sort of £1,000 even more for a specific, brand of modelling amp when, these things, as non-sexy as a katana head is in some regards, it is perfectly functional. You've got the effects on there as well. I don't quite get who is buying all of the more premium, expensive stuff. So this is not to say that anyone is wrong necessarily for enjoying a Tonemaster, for example. So if you're someone who's really got on with one of these, let me know in the comments why you dig it. So some of the things that I can think of is that the Fender Tonemaster was the first sort of modelling amp that was put into like a proper decent pine cabinet. I guess the first that I can think of that looks, like the thing it's supposed to be modelling. So, you stick a Tonemaster in a living room, it looks basically the same as a deluxe reverb, right? It's simple, and you're not going to be fiddling around with knobs too much. And for example, one of my kind of ways of looking at stuff is that I could use an HX Stomp with an FRFR speaker or some monitors, and it would probably be roughly the same sort of price, and I'd have way more flexibility and way more models and stuff. But what if you're saying, I don't want all that, I only am ever going to use a deluxe reverb simulation anyway? Is the Fender as good as, a Line 6 simulation or whatever else you could get sort of at the cheaper end of the market? Probably. Is it going to cost about the same as an FRFR and an HX Stomp? Probably, maybe even a little bit cheaper. Sounds good, looks good, or sounds good enough. I guess this is the thing I was, with Anthony earlier this week, who has a deluxe reverb and a deluxe reverb Tonemaster, and he's like, I don't know if they sound exactly the same, but I use the Tonemaster more. It's just more appropriate for his particular needs. So yeah, this is not to say that you're wrong for any of this if you do use them. I'm just asking who is using them. I think Mike McCready is using them, right? So the Katana, I think the problem with something like the Line 6 Catalyst and to some extent the Katana is that most, I think, of what gets sold in those formats are the combos. And necessarily to keep the prices low on those, they're, built to a price point and they have like a cheaper speaker in them. This is a Mesa Boogie 1x12 from the 80s with a EV speaker in it, EVM 12, like a really decent high headroom, proper big chunky piece of metal. And when you use it in this context as a clean pedal platform, it just works really quite well. And all I've done is just chuck an SM57 in front of this, like I would do with pretty much any other amp, and the thing works. I guess to some extent wondering, like, who is it that's going to spend way more than this? Like, the model is not particularly broken if you get like the Katana head version. So here's the clean. If I chuck on some of the delay and reverb, chuck on the Dude, so the clean, I think, is pretty strong, as far as this stuff goes, pretty good. And if that's how you're using your modelling amp in general, I think the Katana is perfectly decent for that. The other thing that none of the Fenders really do, this higher gain sort of thing, which I don't necessarily feel this, to me, is where the gap is maybe for Marshall, because if they can get this stuff right, then maybe they'll be onto a winner. Like, I don't feel like the drive stuff. unless I turn the treble and stuff quite far down. Now if I chuck a dude in front of that. Well, this is the crunch. This is the question for me. Like, the Katana does quite a lot of good stuff, or like okay stuff at a really reasonable price. The Fender Tonemaster thing is a little bit less, to me, makes a bit less sense. Of course, like, loads of people are buying them. I'm just wanting to know who is buying them, and if you're one of those folks, let me know in the comments. Anthony, who I'm borrowing a couple of Road Worn guitars off, and actually a really nice tube amp, has one. He actually uses more than this deluxe reverb, he says. He's got it up in his living room. I'd just be interested to know your thoughts. Who's buying all of these things? And, you know, if they are like the same size as a Fender tube amp, Fender are making them really well, it has to be said, like, in terms of like using proper cabinetry, proper good speakers, and I think maybe that's where they have the edge over the sort of cheaper Line 6 and Katana stuff. And maybe that's where we should be expecting Marshall to go with this. You know, like, if a proper company that can make really good quality tube amps can put some modelling tech inside one of these, you know, more decent quality cabs and speakers, then maybe people will get on with modelling more. It seems to be the case with the Fender Tonemaster stuff, right?